All right, guys. Well, thanks everybody for hopping on. Thanks for hopping on, Steve, Pauline. Awesome.
Got to get
Well,
some light in here.
no problem. No problem. Well, we'll go ahead and kick this off for the sake of time. I've got about 20 minutes of content, and then I'll have the floor open for questions and discussions at the end. Today's presentation really serves, I think, three roles. We'll start off talking a little bit about Tennessee Achieves as a whole, over kind of an overview of the work that we do. I think for a lot of years, we've done a really good job of talking about specific parts of our program to specific people. If it's talking to certain groups about our mentoring program, and then that group just thinks that we're a mentoring program, or we talk to students about the scholarship and they think we're just a scholarship program. But we do a lot more than that. So we're going to talk a little bit, kind of an overview of Tennessee Achieves. And then we'll get into some Greene County data, benchmarking against the state, and then we'll finish up talking about some action items, ways that you guys can get involved with Tennessee Achieves. If you're not already, you probably are. So then how can you take that a step further and continue to be involved with us? We'll talk about that. So we'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Ben Sterling. I serve as the Senior Director of Content at Tennessee Achieves. I've been on staff since June of 2014, so I'm in my 7th year here professionally. I was actually part of the program, though, when it launched way back in 2009 as a student. So I've seen the program from all perspectives. I'm a first-generation college student that used Tennessee Achieves, so my story is very similar to that of many of our students as well. So I'm always excited to tell the Tennessee Achieves story and talk about the success that we're having and finding. So a little bit of a background. Tennessee Achieves, like I said, launched back with the class of 2009 in Knoxville. It was called Knox Achieves at the time, as a workforce development initiative. And so over the years, we've continued to grow that mission. In 2012, we expanded to 14 counties, most of those in East Tennessee. And since 2012, we have grown steadily to today, where we're serving, as you can see on your screen, nearly every county in the state. With the passing of Tennessee Promise back in 2015, our footprint expanded to 90 counties across the state, where we've since served over 440,000 students, recruited over 71,000 volunteer mentors. And like I said, we're working in 90 counties. Of those, 74 of them are considered rural counties. Of those rural counties, 35 are considered at-risk or distressed counties, as determined by the Department of Community and Economic Development. Those 35 counties, I think our work is probably as pertinent there as it could be anywhere in the state. And then inside of those 90 counties, we're working with just over 600 high schools. And that includes all public high schools in those counties, charter schools, private schools, and home schools. Below that, you can see where we work with 67 post-secondary institutions. That includes all of Tennessee's 13 community colleges in Greene County, that'd be Walter State, and the 27 TCATs across the state. And then there's several 4-year public and private institutions that are eligible for Tennessee Promise funding. As you see this ratio at the bottom of this screen, it probably comes as no surprise to many of you that most of our students land at a community college. Obviously, the ability to attend there tuition free is a carrot, and it's attractive to them, but it's also a good place for students to go attend with the hopes and aspirations of transferring on to a 4-year institution somewhere in the state to earn their bachelor's degree. 75% of students tell us that's their goal, so it comes as no surprise that most of them go to a community college. That TCAT number is pretty good to keep your finger on, though. It's a continually growing number. When we launched Tennessee Promise back in 2015, this number was 8%. So it's continued to grow. I would anticipate it to continue to grow as well as TCATs become more diversified in terms of their program offerings, time offerings, and ease of access. One of those things that I think TCAT continues every year to get better in terms of serving students. Let's continue to talk about reach a little bit. In those 90 counties, we work with 60,000 students annually. That's how many applicants we have. That comes in at about 89% of the state's high school seniors. And for our staff, I think it's kind of hard to wrap our mind around that nearly 90% of Tennessee's seniors get an email from us. So that means that they're working with us in some capacity. When you drill that number down, 78% of all first-time freshmen at Tennessee community colleges are Tennessee Achieves students. So we have representation all across the state. And then even more impressively, 86% of all community college graduates are Tennessee Achieves students. So we have students at all levels of success in there, and we're seeing them walk across the stage, which is really good. In the middle of your screen, you'll see some just general demographic information. This is not specific to Greene County. This is a statewide perspective. 56% of our students say, or 56% of our students are eligible for federal financial aid. This means that they are, I guess you could say, classified as lower income. They're eligible for federal assistance. We determine this by their FAFSA when they complete that. And that's important because that means they're receiving abundance of support when attending college. The middle of your screen, you'll see 40% of our students say that they're a first-generation college student. This is a number that's pretty interesting because I actually think this number is probably higher than 40%. We've done some work on first-generation just in general across the country. We've been working with some groups around the nation in regards to serving first-generation students. And one of the things that we've realized is that everybody has a different definition for what first generation means. And so for me, it means if you're the first person in your direct household, so your parents and your siblings, if they didn't go to college and you did, you're a first-generation college student. But I think a lot of our students see themselves, or they see like their cousin or their aunt or their uncle, and they've gone to college and they consider themselves not a first-generation college student because of that. But in my eyes, it's your direct family. So again, this is self-reported. I think this number is higher, and I think it's a badge of honor that students should be wearing. I certainly wear it, and I know a lot of folks that do. The right-hand side of your screen, you'll see that 51% of our students major in a STEM-related field. We were working with the National Science Board a couple of weeks ago, and they asked us to pull these numbers. And in my mind, this is just a really good data point to kind of applaud in a way. As you look at the economic growth of Tennessee and almost every region that we serve, the economic growth is in industry, manufacturing, healthcare, engineering, those types of jobs. That's where the jobs are. So to see that over half of our students are studying that is a good thing because it means they're preparing themselves for a future workforce. Healthcare jobs are abundant at this point. We had a lunch a couple of weeks ago in Chattanooga with Senator Bo Watson, and he was telling the students that were there that if you took a map of the United States and you threw a dart at it and you hit a city, there's a healthcare job waiting for you there. He's like, I want you to stay in Tennessee, obviously, but you could go anywhere in the country and work if you have some sort of degree in healthcare. So obviously, as I talk to students who are unsure about what they want to do, there's a high-paying job waiting for them if they just study that. So good to see that students are in that direction. Bottom of this slide, you'll see that the Tennessee Promise annual cost is $32 million. This comes out to be about $1,000 per award. So each Tennessee Promise award averages out to be about $1,000 per semester. And then the tnAchieves operating costs, $2.5 million. This pays for things like staff salaries, facilities, technology, travel, those sorts of things, not scholarship dollars, but are more programmatic pieces. So let's talk about what tnAchieves does, just a general overview. Obviously, serving as the partnering organization to the Tennessee Promise Scholarship is sort of the backbone of our work, administering that. Tennessee Promise is what brings students to the table for us. We don't work with 60,000 students a year without Tennessee Promise. So obviously incredibly valuable, but I think it's the wraparound supports that have ensured the success of tnAchieves over the last decade. The first programmatic piece that students are going to encounter when they start to work with us is that volunteer mentor program. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but to me, the reason why this is so valuable is because they have a local person that's invested in their success. And I think that's just a super unique part of the work that we do. The community service requirement, to me, is an important piece of our work because it's ensuring that students have a community mindset when they graduate from college. We just surveyed all of our students this year after they submitted community service, and 96% of them said they were glad that they did the community service. And to me, that just says that they are realizing the value of that volunteerism. And oftentimes when you talk to a student, when they first learn that they have to do community service, they're like, oh man, are you kidding? And then obviously on the backside of that, they're seeing the value of it. And I think just connecting students with their community's needs is incredibly important, especially as they enter that workforce later on. Our summer programs have been continually successful. This year we had 3 summer programs for the first time. Because of the pandemic, we had an online summer bridge program. So the summer bridge in-person program and online program are 3-week sort of academic boot camps. They're designed for students that have scored below a 19 on their ACT, really in an effort to try to prepare these students academically and socially for college in the fall. So essentially during that 3 weeks, they take classes in English, reading, and math. And at the end of that 3 weeks, they take a test. And if they score well enough on that test, they can test out of their learning support or their remediation classes their first semester of college. But what we know and what we hear from students is that obviously the academic preparedness is great, but it's the social preparedness that they get by being on a college campus, or at least learning from college professors online for 3 weeks. That's helping prepare them socially, and it helps them mature really into being a more successful college student in the fall. The Summer Institute is like the Summer Bridge program, but kind of times 1,000. This year it was a 6-week program. We hosted it in Memphis, and it's actually a credit-bearing program. So the students that complete that Summer Institute enter college in the fall with 9 credit hours, and they also have eliminated the need for remediation. So we're taking students that are academically at risk based on their ACT scores, and they're actually entering college significantly ahead of their peers. We had a 100% success rate in that program this year in Memphis. 29 students are entering college more prepared, and it's obviously something that we hope to scale. But as I've been asked in these groups throughout the week, one of the reasons why it's hard to scale this program is finding a student that's willing to give up 6 weeks of their summer and to find transportation to their college campus every day for 6 weeks. It can be a challenge. This program that we host in Memphis is actually, the campus that we host it at is actually in a neighborhood. So students can a lot of times walk to class, or they can catch public transportation for those that don't have their own form of transportation. So for that, it makes it easier for those students to find their way there. In places where transportation, there's not public transportation, and that students can find themselves it can be hard for them to find their way to campus every day. So that's really the biggest challenge in terms of scaling that program. And then the bottom right-hand corner of this little graph here is complete. This is our coaching model that we launched back in 2019, and it's aimed at students that are classified as low income. So based on that FAFSA, if they are considered low income eligible for a Pell Grant, statistically, those are the most at-risk students in terms of college success. So we pair them with a tnAchieves staff member based on their community college service area. And that staff member is tasked with connecting with 75% of their assigned students every month. And the hopes of this program is that by the time the student kind of makes their way through college, they're building that extra layer of accountability with a staff person, so that if they run into a problem, if they run into trouble, they have somebody that they can call on that's there and they trust and has built a relationship with them. We're seeing some really nice success out of this program. And actually this week, we've added an extra layer of innovation that we'll talk about in just a little bit. So we're really excited about continuing to grow, complete. So let's talk data. So as we look at program benchmarks here, this is looking at tnAchieves requirements. Obviously, the FAFSA file rate is something that we monitor annually. The FAFSA is that free application for federal student aid. We see this as like the first step towards college. So we want as many students as possible in our program to be completing that document. Seeing that Greene County is actually ahead of the state average is really good, considering the size of Greene County. Most of the time when we see counties above the state average, it's the lower populated counties. So to see a county with 5 high schools outpacing the state average, I think what that says, especially during a pandemic year, I think that just means that you need to go find your school counselor in your community and give them a pat on the back. It means that they went out of their way to find innovative ways to reach students and get them to complete that FAFSA. I can tell you, I spent many hours this spring helping students complete FAFSAs over Zoom, and it's not an easy thing to do. And I know school counselors were doing that. And so to see that percentage is maintaining a high level, to me, is huge. Community service hours, we had 33,872 community service hours completed by Greene County students since 2015. To me, this is great because most of those hours are completed right there in the community. I would say that there's probably some community organizations that have really benefited from this requirement over the last couple of years. And I always take this time to just plug the fact that if you are part of a community organization and need volunteers, don't be bashful about advertising that to Tennessee Promise students. They need hours, they need things to do. Oftentimes things that are outside and close to a deadline tend to be the most popular. So if you have something that a fall festival, something around Thanksgiving where you need some volunteers, if it's your church or your community organization, let us know and we can actually advertise that to students for you. So just email it over to me and we can take care of that for you. Let's benchmark against the state in terms of student success. As we're looking at this table, I'm going to lay this out for you, so stay with me. The top row, Tennessee Promise applicants, this is from the class of 2021, so the current class that just starts college now. The two middle rows, enrolled number and first year retention, is from the class of 2019. And then 3-year graduation rate, that's the class of 2017. All right. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you look at this data. 700 applicants is great. That's, in my mind, most of the students in the county are applying for Tennessee Promise. And then you look at the enrolled number, 242 students enrolled eligible at Tennessee Promise. Keep in mind, this doesn't include any students that go to non-Tennessee Promise colleges. So like anybody that goes to ETSU or the University of Tennessee, they're not included in that 242 number. But then that first year retention rate, this is of students that go to a Tennessee Promise, if you could call it this, in-network college. 69% fall-to-fall retention rate, above the state average. Big win again. When you have as many students as Greene County does, to see that number that high, really, really good. I think this is a lot of times you'll see a higher retention rate, and then as you look a step further, a higher graduation rate, which you guys are significantly ahead of the state average. Having a really nice campus in your community helps. And that Walter State campus in Greenville is fantastic. I think students are proud to go to school there. And if you look at these numbers, it kind of tells you that. So keep up the good work there. I think it's just great to see anytime a county is outpacing the state average. It's a win in my mind. So let's zoom out just a little bit, talk state average. Our students are outpacing their peers by 14 percentage points in fall-to-fall retention, and then they're outpacing their peers by 16 percentage points in 6-year graduation. So what this says to me is that supports matter, and that the wraparound suite of services that we provide to students, we need to keep doing those because our students are outpacing their peers. If you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see how each program is affecting that fall-to-fall retention, that first-year retention. Those students participating in our summer programs are 34% more likely to retain from fall to fall. Complete coach students, 23% more likely to retain. And then our Knox Promise students are 42% more likely to retain. So Knox Promise is very similar to Complete, where students are coached. They have a staff person that's checking in with them every month. But the only difference is that Knox Promise students have had access to what we call completion grants. But it's essentially emergency funding. So if a student runs into a financial barrier and it somehow impacts their ability to succeed in college, they can request funding and we can take care of whatever that financial barrier is for them. This was in part because of a donation from Mr. Haslam here in Knoxville. And so the good news is that this week we actually announced statewide completion grants. We were able to partner with the General Assembly and we were able to secure some dollars that can be used in this exact same way, but for students outside of Knox County. And this week we launched those on Tuesday, and it has been all hands on deck in terms of students requesting funding for a variety of challenges. Most of the time, this funding goes towards things like gas to get to and from college, groceries, books and technology and tools for their classes. And then there are some cases where it's things like childcare and helping with housing and vehicle repairs and those sorts of things. So we have the freedom really to make those types of decisions. If it's anything other than a healthcare expense, we can pretty much cover the cost of that up to a certain amount every semester. And I'll tell you, we saw this with Knox Promise, but it's even more so now that we're getting a statewide perspective. But it's eye-opening to see the circumstances that many students are facing, and yet they still want to go to college, and they're still willing to ask for help despite significant hardships. And it's, to me, I love the fact that we have this opportunity now across the state. And the good news is the more students engage with this, and if we can show that this support actually impacts their ability to succeed in college, this is just going to grow and become more and more popular in terms of students across the state, and it's going to garner more support from our General Assembly in Nashville. So we're really excited about it this year and look to see how we can continue to grow that program into the future. So one of the side effects or impacts of the pandemic in the higher ed space is we had a significant decrease in our state's college going rate. The college going rate for us is an important indicator because what it says is how many students from the high school graduating class go to college in the fall. Back in 2015, when Tennessee Promise launched, we had a huge jump, 4.6% increase in that. That actually represented more of an increase than the previous 7 years combined. But in 1 year, we also saw all of that progress go away. And so that's really concerning for us, as this is a number that we have prided ourselves on in Tennessee, that we've increased that and maintained it. over the last couple of years. And then obviously the pandemic has affected a lot of things, and one of those was college going. In Greene County, we saw a decrease, not quite as significant as many places in the state, so that's good. But any decrease in our mind, we want that number to be going up. We want more students in the pipeline than the year before every year. So when we see a decrease, to me, that says it's an opportunity for the community to engage and try to right the ship and get things moving back in the right direction. I think there's no better way as a community member to engage with that than being a Tennessee Achieves mentor, because you are involved on the ground level with students as they are making that decision to go or not to go to college. And mentors have the opportunity to do that. Most of you on here are mentors. I'd say you probably all are, so I don't have to do any convincing in terms of that. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an update on what mentoring in 2022 is going to look like. Many of you, I know your faces from years past. So it means that you've mentored back previous to 2020 and 2019 and back, where you had those in-person meetings and you got to see your students face to face. And I understand the value of that. And then in 2020, our mentor program was completely uprooted by the pandemic. We had to try to do something virtually. 2020 was tough, and I understand that for sure. 2021 was 100% virtual, just sort of forced into that space. And then so we launched Tennessee Achieves Connect. And for a lot of mentors, this was a huge resource. They used it like crazy. Others are probably still getting used to it a little bit. But Tennessee Achieves Connect was our answer to that 100% virtual mentoring. So as we move into 2022, we're hopeful that we can do sort of a hybrid approach to mentoring. We're going to keep Connect. We're not going to do away with that at all. So you're going to have the option to meet with your students virtually on a camera, chat with them on there, track their progress, track their goals, all of that virtually. But we're also going to give you the option to meet with your students in person. Little different than in years past, where we're not going to have the scheduled meetings where everybody's mandated to be there and you all sit down at around a number at your table. Instead, we're going to secure space in Greene County. We'll secure space at Walter State. And then you guys will basically have the option to come meet at Walter State with your students. So we're going to secure the space on a date and have a significant time frame. So say from 2 to 6 p.m. And so you guys invite your students to meet you there. We're going to call these Tennessee Achieves open houses. It gives Walter State the opportunity to have a representative there to answer questions. Our team will be there to answer questions, but it's up to you to get you and your students there. If you don't want to meet on that date and say that date doesn't work for you, or you're comfortable trying to meet independently, you can do that. So if you guys wanted to meet somewhere in town and meet in a public space on your own time, on your own date, feel free. But we're going to provide that sort of that platform if you want to meet on that date at Tennessee Achieves Open House to give you kind of the best of both worlds. I think this allows a mentor to pick and choose their personal preference in terms of how they want to meet. We're hopeful that the spring will give us the opportunity to do this. So we're going to keep that for now as our plan. In Greene County, we need 107 mentors, always need around 100 mentors in Greene County. We tend to get right there close every year. From people like Steve Starnes, has been recruiting mentors for us for, I think, now about 8 years, but appreciative of everybody in the community that keeps coming back. We have one of the highest retention rates in the state in Greene County. So many of our mentors have been doing it for many years. So really, really appreciative of that. If you have friends that you haven't recruited and talked them into doing it with you, please do. Returning mentors that recruit their friends are the secret to why we can find 9,000 people every year. So we'd love for you to share the word. New mentors can apply, as you can see at the top of this screen, tnAchieves.org/mentors. Deadline to apply is December 3rd. So we do still have some time, but we start that recruitment process now to make sure that we can have time to get to 9,000. What can we be doing? Obviously, I think the best way to engage with our work is to be a mentor. A mentor in our program, the way that we see it, is on equal footing with our staff. You are as important a stakeholder to our work as our staff is. So we would really appreciate you to come back. If you haven't returned for 2022, just let me know. You can type it in the chat here. I'll get your name written down. I can renew your application for you. Would love for you to recruit your friends too. Another way, if you want to kind of take it a step further, is to connect us in your community. We are always looking for ways to come recruit mentors and tell about the Tennessee Achieves program in the community. So if you're a member in Rotary, if you're a member in Lions Club, if you have an employer, if you're in charge of an employer and have a large group of people that we can tell this to, we would love to come speak. I told the people in Granger yesterday, if you have a group of people with ears, we'll come talk to them. I don't care who they are. So I'm happy to come talk. That can be virtually or in person, whatever works for you guys. We're comfortable doing either. We need 5 minutes. We need an hour. Doesn't matter. We can fill space. So just let us know if you have an opportunity to speak. We are prepared to provide a program. And then the right-hand side of your screen here, I think this is the easiest way to advocate for the work, is to just remind somebody about Tennessee Promise. If you know a high school senior, if you know a parent of a senior, remind them about Tennessee Promise. That application opened on August 1st. Deadline to apply is November 1st. And I'd hate for a student to miss out on this opportunity just because they forgot to apply. It takes 5 minutes. They apply at tnpromise.gov. Remind somebody about it. All right, that's what I have in terms of a program. You guys can feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions. Any concerns, questions, I'm happy to address those now. So I appreciate it, guys.
Ben, you were a student of this program. What was or were your biggest problems as a participant?
As a student,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. Time management. That was the biggest challenge for me. I struggled as a college student. I'm not going to lie. My first year in college was really hard. I lost my Hope Scholarship. I fell below the 3.0 GPA that was required for that. I was not challenged in high school at all. And that's partly my fault, being a first generation, and not necessarily my fault, my family's fault probably. I was a first generation college student. My parents weren't aware of academic rigor. So I was never signed up for AP classes, college level classes, anything like that. I just sort of scooted by. And then when I got to college, there were expectations academically, and I was not prepared for those.
So did you have a mentor when you started? I
did, yeah. So my mentor, I would say that my mentor made the biggest difference in terms of just access, sheer access. So I had no idea what the FAFSA was. I had no idea about college application. I always tell people, like, when I applied for tnAchieves the fall of my senior year, I thought that was my college application. I didn't know there were extra steps. And I think that could probably be said for a lot of students who are first generation students who these conversations aren't happening. So in my world, when I was a high school senior and all through high school, there was never a conversation about where are you going to go to college. There was never a conversation about what are you going to do after you graduate from high school. So when it came down to it, I wasn't sure where I was going until it was like July. I started college in August, right? And so my biggest challenge was just being ill prepared. And it wasn't because my school was bad. It was because I just wasn't engaged in high school.
So the mentor was really there to keep reminding you of a deadline coming up and you can do it and let's get it done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly what we say. That's what happened for me. It was very much connecting the dots for me. I was a smart kid. I was intuitive, but I didn't know what was next. So the mentor was able to connect those dots. Okay, so you filed your FAFSA. Okay, now you need to apply to college. Okay, now you need to register for orientation. Okay, now you need to sign up for classes. Okay, now you need to go to class. You need to show up, right? All of those things that, for me, as a student who excelled in high school in terms of the classes that I was in, but never really had to try very hard, I was more willing to just not go to class. I would rather just go fishing than go to class. And so I learned really quickly that if you don't go to class, you do really poorly. So I had to do less fishing and more studying. And once I figured that out, I found myself doing well in college. That is what I tell students all the time, is that going to a community college in a lot of ways teaches you to be a college student. I went to Austin Peay after I finished at Pellissippi. I had a 4.0 there. And that's not to say that because I was super smart. It's just because I learned how I failed a lot in college at Pellissippi. And I learned how to bounce back from those failures so that when I got to Austin Peay and I was in class and I needed to learn, I actually knew how to study. I knew how to listen to a professor. I knew how to take notes. I knew that I needed to learn my professor's name. All of those things I learned at Pellissippi the hard way, right? But the way that I see it is at a community college, the fall is a lot less. So when you fail, You don't fall as far. It doesn't hurt as bad. You can bounce right back. Where if you fail, if you go to UT and you are having a really hard time in a class and there's 300 students in a class and you're being taught by a GA, it's hard to connect with a resource. But at a place like Walter Stater at Pellissippi, there's 22 kids in your class. Your professor is also, the person teaching your class is also your professor. So you can just meet them after class and get those resources immediately. And so it teaches you accountability in a lot of ways. And for me, I had to learn how to manage my time because I just wasn't studying. And once I figured that out, learned how to take notes and read those, it wasn't as hard as it seemed. But it's the story a lot of times for a student like myself who there was just never an expectation for college. I think when a student has parents who really expect them to go to college, when they get there, they kind of, and not always, but a lot of times, at least they can go home and say, this is really hard. And the parents like, I know, I went. Here's what you need to do to be better. And my parents, we didn't ever even talk about it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When I did this last time, I didn't do it in 2020, but it just seems like there's no response to the emails or the text. It's like all those go to outer space and they never contact me back. And it was very frustrating for me. Even a K that you got the note would have been great. I would have celebrated. But what else can I do to, I want to use the word encourage, but I'm a good nagger. I mean, I know I can nag you, but you need to do it, and this business, I will turn it over to the student. And I said, I'm watching them fail and I can't just sit here.
I understand that for sure. I hear you. You're not alone. I think this year was especially challenging. If you weren't able to establish some sort of dialogue early on, I think it gets harder and harder and harder as time passes because they've become more and more disconnected from the opportunity. Yeah. And there's not a good answer because unfortunately, it's just kind of the nature of it this year in terms of 100% virtual. If they didn't engage with Tennessee Achieves Connect very well, and then you were trying to, they weren't receiving your notification. And then if you back it all the way up, we never had a real good chance to establish a precedent for a mentor, where in a normal year, we get in front of them in October and we preach that in front of every student in the state for 30 minutes. And then you have that in-person interaction, whether they like it or not, they have to come sit in front of a mentor. And that sort of forces it at first, and then it becomes more natural as you move on. We didn't get that interaction this year. In some cases, mentors had tons of success. In other cases, they found had your experience. So a couple things I'd say. Number one is stick with it. And this year, it might just be what it is. And you can't get those students to engage. And if that's the case, just sign back up. Let's try again next year and see if we can do a better job. Not you, but Tennessee Achieves do a better job of getting them prepared. Because now we've learned in terms of what it means to mentor virtually. We're gonna do things a little bit differently this fall and this winter to better prepare the students for that mentor pairing in the spring. So we're gonna do more. We know what to do different. So I think that will help some. Another thing that I would say is that in a lot of cases, mentors, I would try, and I've been trying, anytime I talk to a mentor who has these questions, I would almost, it feels weird to do this, but I would introduce myself every time I text my students. Hi, my name is Ben Sterling. I'm your Tennessee Achieves mentor, and I'm just checking in with you. Have you applied to college? It feels weird to introduce yourself over and over and over again, but we've heard from some students who, if they didn't read your first couple texts, or they didn't see them, or students are in some cases just not great communicators yet. And so they ignore a text one time, and then that's just that one in that moment, that brief moment, now it's gone, right? Because they get so many and stuff. So if you just continually introduce yourself to them and sort of pretend like, okay, they've never seen a text from me, I'm going to send this again.
Right.
And, then they at least know who it's coming from. We've had to do that internally. We've started saying, hey, this is Tennessee Achieves when we text them. We don't just say, remember to file your FAFSA. We say, hey, this is Tennessee Achieves. We're here to remind you to file your FAFSA. because they get so many messages. They're inundated with communication at all times, whether it's social media, friends and text messages, Tennessee Achieves, newsletters that they've signed up for. So trying to treat it more of like an introduction every time until you get them on the hook, maybe.
Ben, it took me almost 9 months to connect with one of mine, and I kind of connected through another of the Tennessee Achieves students that I had. I said, "Hey, have you seen this person? Just let them know I'm trying to reach out and see if they're okay." But yeah, you do have to introduce yourself every time, because they're busy, and if they don't look at that and recognize that number, most of the time they don't even look at it. But yeah, and I've had them to be in a panic and say, "Hey, I thought I registered at TCAP, but they tell me I haven't," and da da da. So I know Sandy fine, and so I just reached out to Sandy and I said, "Hey, can you reach out to this student?" And we got everything fixed.
Right.
And so same thing at Walter State. They couldn't get their FAFSA, said they didn't have it, and what am I going to do? So I know Miss Barbary with Trio. I just hooked them up with Trio, and they helped them out with that. And so you just have to keep at it, because they'll respond to you maybe.
Yeah, you just never know what impact you're making. A lot of times we hear from students who are like, "Well, I couldn't have done this without my mentor," and then we tell the mentor, and they're like, "I never talked to that student." And we're like, "What?" And so the student's like, "Yeah, their reminders is the reason why I continued on." And so you just never know what impact you're having. And sometimes they're just not responding. We have the same challenge internally. I have the same challenge with students that I mentor. So it can be hard to reach them, but I say keep up the good work. Just keep trying. And if this year you just never quite hit it off with anybody, sometimes it's going to happen. That's the reason we give you so many, in hopes of that one's going to strike. But if it doesn't, we'll try again next year.
I've discovered also that many of the students, if not all of them, I don't know, have their own private email, and that's the one you want to get a hold of.
Yeah, they have multiple email addresses. They also create new ones randomly, which is a problem. They forget the password and they just make a new email instead of changing the password. Yeah, if they check email at all.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of Tennessee Achieves Connect. If we can get them in Connect and they can sign up and we can force them to sign up for notifications, which we do. If we can get them to activate. Then when you message them in Connect will pester them, telling them that you've messaged them over and over and over until they log in and check it. So that works, but we've just got to get them in there. So our strategy this fall, hopefully, fingers crossed, is that we can visit every high school and have a mandatory meeting with just the students during the school day. So for example, we'd visit Greenville and have all the students in an auditorium, sign them in with a QR code on a piece of paper that they sign with their phone. And that automatically takes them to Connect to activate. So while we have them in the room, they're signing in, accomplishing their mandatory meeting, and they're activating Connect all at the same time. So our goal, if COVID will let us, that's what we want to do.
So how do we sign up for Tennessee Connect?
That'll be community. Well, you're already in there if you mentored this year. Yeah. So if you mentored previous years, you're already in there. New mentors, we'll send them out a link.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're actually, this week, we're looking at trying to kind of redo our website a little bit, so that login process hopefully will be even easier. So then you just go to our homepage and you can log in that way. Yeah, anytime you have questions though about Connect, our team, that's what we're here for. Tyler on our team, that you probably got an email from before, is the Connect guy. He's actually the one that set it up to begin with. So he's gotten better and better with Connect. I'd say that's one of the things that will help us as we serve you guys in 2022, is we're better at Connect than we were when we launched it. It was new last year to us too. So we were learning as we went, and we're better at it now, I think. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you all so much for hopping on. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer some more of those. Otherwise, this is all that I've got. I really appreciate y'all for continuing to engage with us, and engaging in Greene County is an important place for us, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your work.
Definitely. Sure. Of course.
Thanks, Ben.
Yep. Thank you.
Let's hope it's a better year.
That's what I'm hoping for sure.
Okay, take care.
See you guys.
And everybody stay safe, please.
You too.